You were never taught this part about success. Not because it is secret, but because it is inconvenient. Ambition promises freedom, but quietly installs a cage. The more you chase, the heavier it gets, yet you keep calling it growth. No one warns you that discipline can become self-erasure. That drive can turn into a silent form of self-rejection. And that winning the external game can cost you the internal one. This is not about quitting ambition. This is about exposing the hidden rule no one admits. Because the most expensive price of success is paid inside your own mind. Ambition is celebrated as a virtue, but almost no one talks about its cost, and the most dangerous costs are the ones you never see coming, the silent deductions taken from your mind long before success ever arrives, because ambition does not only ask you to move forward, it quietly demands that you trade pieces of your inner life for the promise of a future version of yourself that may never feel satisfied. And this is where the hidden tax begins, not in money, not in time, but in identity. Because the moment ambition becomes the lens through which you measure your worth, you stop being a human having a life and start becoming a project under constant evaluation, and every day that does not move you closer to your imagined peak feels like a failure, even if you are objectively progressing, and this creates a subtle psychological debt, a background noise of dissatisfaction that never fully turns off. Because ambition thrives on comparison, and comparison is the fastest way to poison contentment, as it trains your brain to focus not on what you have built but on what still separates you from others, and this gap becomes the source of chronic tension, the kind that does not explode but slowly drains your emotional reserves, and the more ambitious you are, the more refined this comparison becomes, because you are no longer comparing yourself to the average person, you are comparing yourself to the top fraction of a fraction, people who are already extreme outliers, and by doing so you normalize extraordinary outcomes and turn them into your baseline expectation, which means even winning feels strangely hollow, because it does not deliver the emotional payoff your mind promised you, and this is not a personal failure, it is a structural flaw in how ambition rewires perception, because the brain adapts faster than desire, and every milestone you hit quickly becomes the new normal, while the next, bigger goal immediately moves into the foreground, demanding your attention and emotional energy. And so you run, not toward fulfillment, but away from the discomfort of standing still, and over time this creates an identity that is entirely future-oriented, where peace is always postponed and rest feels undeserved, because rest implies you are satisfied, and satisfaction feels like a threat to momentum, and this is how ambition begins to tax your nervous system, keeping it in a constant low-grade state of urgency, where even moments of calm are tinged with guilt, and your mind rarely fully shuts down, because it has learned that there is always something more to optimize, improve, or chase, and the tragedy is that this mindset often looks like discipline from the outside, while on the inside it feels like never being allowed to arrive, and the deeper you go into this loop, the harder it becomes to separate who you are from what you are achieving, until your self-respect becomes performance-based, rising and falling with results, and this makes you psychologically fragile, because no matter how strong you appear, your inner stability is tied to variables you do not fully control, and this is the first hidden rule of ambition, that when success becomes your primary source of meaning, it also becomes your primary source of anxiety, and the tax is paid daily, in subtle ways, through shortened patience, reduced presence, emotional numbness, and a constant feeling that life is happening somewhere ahead of you, not where you are standing. Right now that ambition tightens its grip, it begins to reshape your relationships in ways that are easy to justify and hard to reverse, because when your goals dominate your mental landscape, other people slowly become secondary characters in your personal narrative, valuable only in how well they support or align with your trajectory, and this does not happen through cruelty or intent. It happens through neglect masked as necessity, because ambition always has a reason, a deadline, an opportunity cost, and so conversations become shorter, attention becomes fragmented, and emotional availability becomes conditional, reserved for moments when it does not interfere with progress, and over time this creates distance, not just from others, but from your own emotional depth, because deep connection requires presence, and presence feels inefficient to an ambition-driven mind. And this is where loneliness begins to grow, even when you are surrounded by people, because you are no longer fully with them, you are partially with the future version of yourself you are trying to become, and the irony is that many ambitious people believe success will eventually buy them the freedom to reconnect, to slow down, to enjoy life more deeply, but what they do not realize is that habits of attention do not automatically change with circumstances, and if you train yourself for years to be restless, dissatisfied, and forward-obsessed, success will not magically rewire you into someone who knows how to be still, because the skill of contentment is not unlocked by achievement, it is practiced long before it, and this is why so many high achievers report feeling strangely empty at the peak of their success, because they arrive at the destination only to discover they never learned how to live there, and the emptiness is not caused by lack of gratitude, it is caused by emotional atrophy, because ambition, when unchecked, encourages you to delay joy, to postpone meaning, and to treat fulfillment as a reward rather than a foundation, and this delay accumulates interest, because the longer you live without allowing yourself to feel enough, the harder it becomes to recognize enough when it finally appears, and psychologically, this creates a narrowing of life, where only goal-relevant experiences feel significant, and everything else fades into background noise, and this is dangerous, because meaning in life is not built from a single source, it is built from a network of experiences, relationships, values, and inner alignment, and when ambition monopolizes that network, any disruption to your progress, a failure, a setback, a delay, can feel existentially threatening, as if the entire structure of your life has been shaken, and this is why burnout is not simply about overwork, it is about over-identification, because when you are exhausted but still emotionally invested, rest feels insufficient, but when you are exhausted and emotionally empty, rest feels pointless, and this is the deeper cost ambition extracts. It does not just tire the body, it hollows out the meaning that once made effort feel worthwhile, and the mind, sensing this emptiness, responds by doubling down on the chase, believing that more success will finally fill the gap, and so the cycle tightens, more striving, less satisfaction, more pressure, less presence, and each turn of the wheel takes a little more from you, until one day you realize that the life you were building was supposed to feel alive, but somewhere along the way it became something you were merely managing. The most deceptive aspect of ambition is that it rarely feels like a problem while you are inside it, because it is rewarded by society, praised by peers, and reinforced by visible progress, and when something is working externally, it becomes very hard to question its internal consequences. But the hidden tax continues to accumulate in the form of chronic dissatisfaction, not dramatic enough to force change, but persistent enough to shape your emotional baseline, and this is where many ambitious people become trapped in a state of quiet misery, functional, productive, respected, but internally disconnected, because their inner world has been subordinated to external metrics for so long that they no longer know how to listen to it, and when discomfort arises, they treat it as a signal to work harder rather than to reflect deeper, and this creates a profound imbalance, because ambition is a powerful engine, but it is a terrible compass. It can move you far, but it cannot tell you where you should go, and without a compass rooted in values, meaning, and self-awareness, you can travel very fast in the wrong direction, and still feel justified because the movement itself feels productive, and this is why the hidden rule is not to abandon ambition, but to renegotiate your relationship with it, to stop treating it as the source of your worth and start treating it as a tool. Because tools are meant to serve you, not define you, and this shift requires a mental reframing that many people resist, because it feels like lowering standards or betraying potential, but in reality it is about protecting the parts of yourself that make success meaningful in the first place, and one of those parts is your capacity for presence. The ability to fully inhabit a moment without evaluating it for future utility, because presence is not laziness, it is psychological stability, and another part is your capacity for enough, the ability to recognize when a goal has been sufficiently achieved, rather than immediately moving the finish line, and this does not kill ambition, it civilizes it, because ambition without boundaries is like fire without containment, powerful, but destructive, and boundaries are not limitations on growth, they are conditions for sustainability. And this is the mindset shift that changes everything, the realization that fulfillment is not something you earn after success, it is something you integrate alongside it, because if you postpone fulfillment until every goal is met, you will never experience it, since ambition always has another level, another comparison, another horizon, and psychologically, the brain is wired to chase novelty, not satisfaction, which means you must consciously interrupt the chase to experience meaning. And this interruption feels uncomfortable at first, because it challenges the identity you have built around striving. But discomfort is not a sign of danger, it is often a sign of recalibration, and when you begin to detach your sense of self from constant achievement, you create an inner buffer against failure, delay, and uncertainty, and this buffer is what allows you to pursue success without being consumed by it, because you are no longer asking ambition to answer questions it was never designed to answer, like who you are, or why your life matters. When ambition is no longer allowed to dominate your inner narrative, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. Your effort becomes cleaner, less frantic, more intentional, because you are no longer running from emptiness, you are moving toward chosen goals, and this distinction changes the emotional texture of your work, because effort fueled by fear of inadequacy feels heavy, while effort fueled by clarity feels focused. And the hidden tax begins to lift, not because you stopped striving, but because you stopped bleeding meaning into the future, and reclaimed it in the present. And this is where true mental strength emerges, not in relentless pushing, but in the ability to hold ambition and contentment at the same time, without letting one destroy the other. And this balance is rare, because it requires you to resist both societal pressure and your own conditioned impulses. But it is also what separates those who merely succeed from those who feel whole while succeeding, because they understand that life is not a rehearsal for a later reward, it is the only stage there is, and every day you sacrifice entirely for tomorrow, you are paying a tax you will never get refunded. And this awareness does not make you passive, it makes you precise, because you start choosing goals that align with your values rather than goals that merely inflate your status. And you start measuring progress not just by external milestones, but by internal signals, like clarity, calm, and consistency. And these signals are harder to fake, but far more reliable, because they indicate whether your success is integrating into your life or eroding it. And the final hidden rule is this: ambition is not dangerous because it asks for more, it is dangerous when it convinces you that you are not enough until you get there. And the moment you reject that premise, the entire game changes. Because you stop chasing success to fix yourself, and start using success to express yourself, and in that shift, the emptiness begins to dissolve, not because you have less desire, but because your desire is no longer at war with your sense of self. And this is the quiet power most people never learn, that the highest form of success is not reaching the top at any cost, but climbing in a way that does not hollow you out on the way up, so that when you finally look around at what you have built, you are still there to experience it. There is a moment, usually unnoticed, when ambition stops being a choice and becomes a reflex, and this is where most people lose control without realizing it, because when striving turns automatic, you are no longer directing your life, you are reacting to an internal pressure that never learned how to rest. And psychologically this is critical, because reflexive ambition does not ask whether a goal is meaningful, it only asks whether it keeps you ahead, and ahead of what is rarely clear. But the motion itself feels necessary, and this is how people end up living in constant tension even during periods of stability, because their nervous system has been trained to associate stillness with danger, as if slowing down means falling behind, and this conditioning is reinforced every time productivity is praised more than presence, every time exhaustion is worn as a badge of honor, and every time worth is subtly linked to output. And over time your inner dialogue hardens, turning compassionate self-talk into relentless evaluation, where even rest is measured by how well it prepares you for the next push. And this creates a fragmented inner life, because parts of you are always working while other parts are quietly starving, the part that wants meaning without metrics, the part that wants to feel alive without being impressive. And these neglected parts do not disappear, they wait, and they surface later as emptiness, irritability, or a vague sense that something is missing even when everything seems to be in place. And the danger here is subtle, because nothing is obviously wrong, you are functioning, progressing, achieving, but the internal cost keeps compounding, and the mind begins to experience life as a series of checkpoints rather than a lived experience, which flattens emotional depth, because anticipation replaces appreciation, and planning replaces presence. And when this becomes your default mode, joy starts to feel fragile, because it is constantly interrupted by the thought of what comes next. And this is why so many driven individuals struggle to enjoy their own success, because enjoyment requires surrender, and surrender feels unsafe to a mind trained on constant control. And the hidden rule here is that ambition trains you to tighten, while fulfillment requires you to soften, and holding both at the same time is a skill most people never develop, so they oscillate between overexertion and collapse, pushing hard until burnout forces a pause, then resting just enough to start pushing again, never addressing the underlying imbalance. And the longer this cycle continues, the more your sense of self becomes dependent on momentum, because momentum distracts you from the question you are avoiding, whether the life you are building actually feels like your own. Breaking this pattern does not begin with less effort, it begins with more honesty. Because the real shift happens when you stop asking what you can achieve next and start asking what this achievement is costing you internally, and this question is uncomfortable because it exposes trade-offs you were taught to ignore. But mental strength is not the absence of discomfort, it is the capacity to face it without running, and when you allow yourself to see the full cost of your ambition, something recalibrates, because clarity interrupts compulsion, and once ambition becomes conscious again, you regain choice, and choice is where power actually lives, not in endless drive, but in deliberate direction, and this is where ambition transforms from a consuming force into a disciplined tool, something you can engage and disengage rather than something that owns you, and paradoxically, this often leads to better outcomes, not because you want success less, but because your energy is no longer leaking into anxiety, comparison, and self-doubt, and your focus becomes cleaner, less emotionally charged, more strategic. Because you are no longer trying to prove your worth through results, and this internal decoupling is the real liberation, because it allows you to fail without collapsing, to succeed without inflating, and to rest without guilt, and these are not small psychological wins, they fundamentally change how life feels on a daily basis, because your baseline shifts from tension to groundedness, and groundedness is what sustains long-term excellence, and the final truth is this: ambition was never meant to be your identity. It was meant to be an instrument, and instruments are powerful only when guided by a steady hand, not when they play themselves. And when you stop outsourcing your self-respect to future achievements, you reclaim something far more valuable than motivation. You reclaim inner coherence, the feeling that your actions, values, and inner life are aligned, and this alignment does not make you complacent, it makes you resilient, because you are no longer chasing success to escape yourself. You are building it from a place of internal solidity, and this is the success that does not hollow you out, because it does not demand that you disappear in order to exist. And once you understand this hidden rule, the chase loses its grip, not because you stopped wanting more, but because you finally stopped believing that more would complete you.